The reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah, they have nothing else to talk about. Maybe you should get the lawyer that worked on that Covington Catholic school case. What was that, a $200 million settlement? I think, Charlie, you could use the money, and your students definitely could,
what
too.
What happens when CharlieKirk and MegynKelly lock in on a target? Let's just say SunnyHostin picked the wrong day to act unbothered. It wasn't a debate. It was a verbal smackdown with no exit plan, no scripts, no filters, and no one to save her when the heat got too real. This wasn't just another roundtable argument. It was straight-up intellectual warfare, and Sunny got caught slipping. Megyn showed up swinging with that polished, ice-cold precision. Charlie came in raw and relentless. No fluff, just facts, and the kind that sting. And Sunny, she walked in with that signature smirk like she was about to school the class. But by the end, she looked like she was trying to find the emergency exit with her pride still intact.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. SunnyHostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
This wasn't just a roast. This was dissection on live TV. See, Sunny loves playing the role of the fearless truth teller. But when the real pressure hits, all that confidence crumbles quick. She came armed with buzzwords and that holier-than-thou tone, but it was no match for two sharp minds who came ready to challenge everything. She talks like she's guarding the gates of society, but the only thing she was holding this time was an L. She talks like she's made of conviction, but it's really just cardboard and chaos. Her arguments, flimsy. Her confidence, loud. Most of the time, it's just a breeze of cherry-picked headlines dressed up as facts. But this time, that breeze ran straight into a storm. Enter CharlieKirk and MegynKelly. Two voices who didn't need a debate stage, a moderator, or even a face-to-face shot to tear down Sunny's house of hot air. They came from opposite ends of the media world, but they had one mission, to expose the illusion, and they did it with precision. Let's break it down. SunnyHostin sees herself as the liberal media's moral compass. First image in your head? Picture her walking into the studio like she's delivering the word itself. Every sentence dripping with that smug sense of I care more than you, so I must be right. But here's the problem. Passion without depth is just noise. And when that noise meets real arguments, it collapses. She's the queen of sound bites. She tosses out those dramatic one-liners meant to stir the crowd, rile up the base, and slap a villain label on anyone who dares to challenge her worldview, especially conservatives. That's her thing. Calling them out loud and proud like she's leading some televised moral crusade. But this time, those same old lines didn't land, not with Charlie and Megyn in the mix. What followed was a takedown she never saw coming.
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. But I said this to our team. I said working people, the muscular class, including working women, they are so in favor of Trump, and they don't want to be called stupid or uneducated.
Let's talk about Sunny and consistency, because that relationship, it's rocky at best. Her real skill isn't commentary, it's selective outrage. She flips it on and off like a light switch depending on the politics of the moment. If it's someone she disagrees with, out comes the torch and a full-blown monologue. But if it's someone on her side of the aisle, suddenly it's silence. Not a word, not a glance, just crickets. That's not journalism. That's damage control dressed up as righteousness. You won't catch her holding both sides accountable. That's not the game she's playing. Her commentary sounds more like a campaign speech than a pursuit of truth. At this point, she's less of a journalist and more of a spin artist in an expensive blazer delivering outrage by the segment. Then enters CharlieKirk. Now, subtlety isn't his strong suit, but that's exactly why his strategy worked. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to throw insults. He just brought the one thing that cuts through media fluff every time: facts. He showed up with receipts, timelines, stats, and questions no one else at that table wanted to ask. While Sunny was busy painting every conservative with the same brush, Kirk went for the cracks in her story. And once he started pointing out the double standards, it was hard to unsee.
The founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo-Nazis.
His message was clear. Sunny's outrage isn't about truth. It's not about justice. It's about branding and keeping the narrative neat for her audience. But once the facts hit, that brand started to unravel fast. CharlieKirk didn't just call her out. He laid it out piece by piece, voting records, public statements, repeated patterns. He exposed how Sunny's moral outrage flares up only when it's politically useful. If the extremism comes from the other side, she's all fire and fury. But when it's from her own camp, suddenly she's quiet, like the MAC got cut. That justice warrior image, it's more of a costume than a conviction. And here comes the sting. The outspoken moral compass got caught waving the flag of justice, but only when it matched her team colors. Now, let's talk about the real takedown moment. Charlie came in swinging like a man who stumbled across a pile of receipts nobody wanted found. And Megyn, she didn't need to raise her voice. She calmly cracked open the binder and started stacking evidence like a lawyer who's been waiting all week for court. No yelling. No chaos. Just cold, undeniable contradictions. See, CharlieKirk isn't the type to sugarcoat. He hits hard. And this time, he had ammo, examples where Sunny warned about dangerous rhetoric from conservatives.
Look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away
while completely ignoring worse behavior coming from people she supports. That double standard didn't just slip by, it got lit up under a spotlight. The irony, Sunnis built her brand on sounding the alarm about political fires. But when the flames are in her own backyard, she's nowhere to be found. No fire truck. No hose. Just silence. That's not bravery. That's convenience in a blazer. And Kirk called it exactly like it is. CharlieKirk isn't just another talking head tossing blame across a table. He's the guy who walks in with the fire hose while everyone else is busy playing with matches. In a world of shouting matches and finger-pointing, Kirk skips the drama and drops facts, timelines, voting records, public statements, lined up like soldiers, marching straight through the noise. He didn't just call Sunny out. He showed the blueprint. He tracked how her outrage flips like a TV remote. If a conservative says something controversial, she's out front, torch raised, demanding accountability. But when extremism comes from her own side, it's like she vanished into thin air. No fiery monologue. No teary concern. Not even a whisper. Just dead air. This isn't just inconsistency, it's strategy.
Amazing. She's specifically there referring to the women, but of course it's the non-college educated men as well who voted for Donald Trump. And the nerve of this woman to whom the country has given so much to try to dump on people who didn't go to college. Look at you. Look at your achievements. How do you like the so-called uneducated now?
Sunny's not moved by principle. She's moved by performance. Her outrage doesn't rise with the seriousness of a situation. It rises with what sells, what trends, what gets applause. She's turned moral outrage into a commodity, where every headline she reacts to is carefully chosen for maximum emotional payoff. That's the trick. It's not about justice. It's about audience engagement. She's perfected the emotional marketplace where passion is currency and truth takes a backseat. Kirk didn't need to yell. He just held up the mirror. And what stared back wasn't a crusader for justice. It was a brand manager in full swing. Sunny's outrage doesn't come from the heart. It comes from a subscription model. She delivers what sells, outrage on demand, when the political mileage makes it worth the airtime. And CharlieKirk. He spotted that formula a mile away. His takedown wasn't loud or messy. It wasn't about scoring cheap shots. It was clean, precise, and brutal. He played the role of a media forensic expert, showing the receipts, tracing the inconsistencies, and highlighting how Sunny's righteous fury is less about conviction and more about choreography. All timed. All rehearsed. The real MIC drop. Her outrage isn't genuine. It's staged. It's rented. And guess what? That lease is about to expire the moment real facts show up knocking.
SunnyHostin I think she went to Binghamton undergrad, and she went to Notre Dame Law School, which is a great law school. Her son right now is at Harvard. That son she wants us to think is sitting there oppressed, who she's got to fight on behalf of because America is so awful to him. They're educating him right now at Harvard University. And Jason, would you take a look at this? Because I'm going to guess, I haven't been to your house down in Tennessee, but I'm going to guess it doesn't look like this. This is Sunny Hostin's home in this shitty country that she can't stand, that doesn't treat Black people like Sunny well. She let People magazine feature her home. Look at this dump. This country sucks. She went to Notre Dame Law School. She makes millions on The View. Her son's at Harvard. I'm sure her daughter's at private school on her way to some Ivy League. This is where Sunny lives. And F off, America. I can't stand how you've kept us all in chains. That's her messaging.
But just when you think the room couldn't get any hotter, in walks MegynKelly, calm, unbothered, and more dangerous than any shouting match. She didn't need volume. She brought something sharper than Kirk's sledgehammer, a thick binder of cold, hard proof. Every page was a dagger. Her precision, surgical. Her focus, like a scalpel under a microscope. No theatrics. No snark. Just truth. Delivered with the patience of someone who's watched too many fake meltdowns to even flinch. Megyn didn't come to play defense. She came to dissect, and with every quiet, calculated fact she laid down, she exposed the show for what it was. Not a crusade, but a performance that finally ran out of script. MegynKelly doesn't storm in. She arrives steady, sharp, and ready to dissect.
Do you think if a liberal came to speak at University of Kentucky, they'd give an open mic like I just did to a conservative and had a discussion like this?
I certainly hope they would.
No, they wouldn't. Because speech is not a left-wing value. That is why they have to deploy shock troops called Antifa to go after everywhere I go. When I go to University of California, Davis next week, there has to be 120 police officers because of the threats, the violent threats of liberals that want me dead, that want to disrupt our events. There are no right-wing hecklers that come to events like this. I think it's rather clear there's one side that is trying to do everything they can to shut one side up, and one side that's trying to open up the marketplace of ideas. And I think that's rather
While Sunny tries to reframe events like a trial lawyer rehearsing for a headline-grabbing closing argument, Megyn doesn't flinch. She doesn't waste time arguing back and forth. Instead, she calmly lays out the blueprint, how Sunny cherry-picks context, dresses it up in polished soundbites, and spins it into a story that feels powerful, until you actually look at the details. It's like watching a magician pull off a flashy illusion, only to realize the trick was just smoke, mirrors, and a card up the sleeve. What Megyn exposes is a pattern, not a mistake. Every time Sunny delivers that signature performance, it follows the same rhythm: big emotion, grand statements, and glaring factual holes. Holes so obvious they don't require a microscope. They could be spotted from space. Take her takes on race, justice, politics. They're not just slanted, they're carefully trimmed highlight reels that crop out anything that doesn't fit the narrative. If the truth gets messy or inconvenient, it disappears. If it doesn't fuel the outrage, it's left on the cutting room floor. Kelly points out that Sunny's so-called truth isn't really truth at all. It's a choose-your-own-outrage story, where every path leads to the same dramatic monologue, the same pointed finger, the same moral performance, all theater. No substance. And then Megyn drops the real grenade, the media ecosystem that lets it all happen. People like Sunny don't just operate in echo chambers. They depend on them. It's a cycle. Big words, louder emotions, zero pushback. The more intense the grandstanding, the less likely anyone is to fact-check. Truth takes a backseat. Applause takes the wheel. But here's the twist. Megyn doesn't need to shout to land her hits. She just speaks plainly, lays down the evidence, and lets the contradictions speak for themselves. And when the noise fades, she's the only one left standing in clarity. More than any on-air rant ever could. It's the quiet power of precision, like a hawk circling slowly, striking only when it's time. Watching her pick apart Sunny Hostin's media performance felt less like a debate and more like a masterclass in quiet demolition.
Sunny Hostin, over at The View, had some choice words for Brittany Mahomes, who's married to the other Mahomes guy, who plays for the Chiefs. She had the temerity to like a Trump post online, and she's been taking shit for it ever since. She wound up posting this defensive tweet saying, God, people are like, you got to settle down, like, go be a better person and don't jump all over people for just random stuff. And here's Sunny Hostin weighing in on it.
Since she is in an interracial marriage, she should have known that to support a racist is problematic. Her children are biracial, and her family is one of the families that in the 70s could not have lived in any of Donald Trump's buildings. So
she didn't flip the table. She just exposed that it was made of cardboard all along. No yelling, no name calling, just facts, questions, and perfectly timed revelations. And when you put her next to CharlieKirk, you've got a force to be reckoned with. Kirk brings the raw power, the timelines, the stats, the receipts. He smashes the surface. Then Megyn steps in with a scalpel, slicing through what's left with pinpoint accuracy. Together, they didn't just challenge Sunny, they dismantled the entire image. What was once sold as moral clarity now looked like a patchwork of scripted outrage, personal bias, and carefully managed narratives. It wasn't about principles. It was about performance. And when you shine real scrutiny on a performance like that, it doesn't hold up, it folds. Sunny marches on, head held high, still delivering fiery speeches and claiming the high ground. But it's all noise. Because once someone peels back the curtain, there's no one left believing it. The self-appointed truth teller was left exposed, not by insults, but by information. That's the power of real journalism. It doesn't have to scream to be heard. It just has to reveal. While Sunny builds castles out of commentary and indignation, Kirk and Kelly quietly go to work. They don't need viral clips or dramatic walk-offs. They've got the one thing outrage can't survive: facts. And no matter how loud the waves of moral fury crash, when a brand is built on outrage instead of values, it's only a matter of time before the tide pulls it under.
SunnyHostin of The View finds out that this is fantastic. She is descended from slaveholders. Here's what she said when she went out on The View.
Really reluctant to do it because I just sensed that there could be something in my family history that would be disappointing. But what I found out was that my mother's family, while they are Puerto Rican, they actually originate from Spain. And the reason that they moved to Puerto Rico is because the slave trade had been sort of canceled in Spain and then Curacao, and then they moved all of their slaves to Puerto Rico. And so the family business, I have been told that they were printers and journalists.
SunnyHostin's favorite move, reframing the story, twisting facts just enough to steer the narrative her way. But under real scrutiny, that strategy blew up. And fast. MegynKelly made sure of it. She didn't just call it out, she broke it down piece by piece, exposing a pattern that was almost comical if it weren't so transparent. See, Sunny's version of the truth always seems to stay one step ahead of reality. Whether she's talking about the justice system, race, or political power plays, there's always a convenient escape hatch built into her take, just in case the facts don't back her up. And that's what Megyn called out. This isn't just a personality quirk, it's the very definition of media hypocrisy. Sunny operates in a bubble where no one pushes back, where her statements float through echo chambers and return louder, unquestioned, and amplified. A world where saying something passionately counts more than whether it's actually true.
So I'm thrilled you're doing the next debate, Megyn. That's a step in the right direction, because honestly, you're going to ask the tough questions very firmly and fairly. More, that Univision person that was there a couple debates ago was just obviously had an agenda, and you're going to hold them accountable. And also, you have a really big audience of people of all different political backgrounds. And finally, Megyn, I think, and I don't know what you're going to ask, but I would imagine you're going to get some answers on this trans thing, which I think is a civilizational defining issue, right? That has not received any attention
by NBC,
right?
Not a question.
Because they know it's a loser.
But here's the moment that changed everything. Two narratives collided, one built on emotion, the other on facts. CharlieKirk came in swinging with hard data. Megyn followed with scalpel-like analysis. It wasn't a debate. It was a collapse. Sunny's carefully curated image, the righteous truth teller with all the answers, fell apart in real time. Not with insults. Not with shouting. Just pressure. Cold, steady pressure from two people who weren't buying the performance. And in the end, all it took was a few receipts and a little truth. That towering persona crumbled like a bad souffle under a flickering spotlight. SunnyHostin wanted to be the voice of reason, the cultural gatekeeper, the fierce protector of progressive values. But under real pressure, she looked more like someone frantically patching a leaky boat with duct tape, and still sinking. What made the unraveling so satisfying wasn't the yelling or insults. It was the precision. The patience. The quiet demolition done with nothing but facts and clarity. CharlieKirk and MegynKelly didn't need to mock her. They didn't need to shout over her. They simply pulled back the curtain, calmly, methodically, and let her contradictions speak for themselves. That's what made it so devastating. It was polite but surgical. And when the dust settled, what was left was a shaky foundation exposed for all to see. The irony? Neither of them even had to confront Sunny directly. There was no stage. No dramatic back and forth. Their analysis, delivered outside the spotlight, hit harder than any primetime debate could have. It wasn't noise that took her down, it was reason. It was order. It was truth. The louder Sunny shouted about moral high ground, the quieter the room became, because her argument simply couldn't hold up. No firepower. Just flair. This whole episode was a reminder, the most effective takedowns don't come from chaos, they come from clarity. It's not the insult that lands. It's the evidence. When you peel back the layers of Sunny's outrage, what you find isn't a foundation built on principle. It's performance, applause-chasing wrapped in emotion, but empty underneath that she's not the fearless defender of truth she claims to be. She's a media stage act, built for claps, not credibility. And this time, the curtain didn't just slip, it came crashing down. In the end, this whole saga is a reminder, a cautionary tale about what happens when airtime gets mistaken for authority. SunnyHostin may have the platform, the spotlight, and the confidence of someone who's never been challenged in her own bubble.
The revisionist media coverage of it, Charlie, just yet another reminder of how important the lane you and I are in has become for anybody wanting actual honest information.
Yeah, a couple thoughts. First, that's the #1 podcast out there. And so it's not just some fringe thing. It does very, very well. It always almost near the top of the podcast charts. Number two, I just laugh when, grown men talk like 15-year-old girls with their the up inflection of their voice. We don't really know if they're guilty or in. It's like, it just drives me crazy. It's like that's central casting for Upper East Side metrosexual New York Times podcast host.
CharlieKirk and MegynKelly proved something louder than any debate could. If there's no backbone of facts behind the noise, that voice fades fast. Because here's the truth, it doesn't take a viral clash or a fiery panel fight to bring down a carefully crafted narrative. All it takes is two people armed with receipts, logic, and the patience to let the truth do the talking. No shouting, no drama, just calm exposure. Sunny built her brand on emotion, on outrage, on stirring the pot at just the right moment. But when that performance was held up to actual scrutiny, there was nothing solid underneath, just contradictions stacked on spin. And when you poke those too many times, they collapse. Kirk and Kelly never needed a shared stage. They didn't need to go head-to-head with her in real time. They simply laid out the facts and let the narrative implode under its own weight. That's the real power, quiet, methodical, undeniable truth. And once it hits, there's nowhere left to hide. So, if you found this takedown as satisfying as we did, don't just sit there, hit that like button before Sunny accuses it of pushing misinformation. And subscribe to the channel, because somebody's got to keep checking the so-called truth coming from The View. And trust us, we're just getting started.